This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
My oncologist talked me through all of my options, and most importantly, he listened. He understood that quality of life means quality of my love life, too. My sex life, my family life, my married life, my hot and sexy goddess life. All of it mattered. Not just being alive, which of course I am lucky to be, but there's more to it than just bare-bones survival. Valeria interviews Anna Sullivan. She is a writer, speaker, and a licensed mental health therapist. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times, Vogue, Cosmopolitan, Salon, HuffPost, Insider, and Zibby magazine, among other publications. In 2017, at 37 years old, Anna was diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer and immediately began a targeted hormone therapy to wipe out the estrogen in her body and lower the risk of recurrence. Within days, she found herself in premature medical menopause. While her doctors had prepared her for the mastectomy, Anna felt ill-prepared for the plethora of menopausal symptoms she quickly began to experience. She penned a personal essay about her experience for the HuffPost Personal, which went viral. Blown away by the response she received from readers, she realized many women continue to suffer the taboo symptoms of menopause. Anna has been a guest on the Tamron Hall Show and radio shows. She is currently writing a book. This book is about how I came to accept my body both as a vessel that keeps me alive and one that is capable of deep pleasure. At times, I believed it was a trade-off. Meet Anna at annasullivan.net. Here's the interview with Anna Sullivan.
In your own words, who is Anna Sullivan?
Let's see. I certainly have a lot of roles that identify me. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend, I'm a writer, I'm a trained therapist, but I'm not currently practicing. I'm a highly sensitive person. I always have been. And I really feed on connecting with other people through humor and stories and honest conversations.
It's interesting. When you said, I'm a highly sensitive person, something in me said, oh, I'm so glad. I'm grateful, for you being a highly sensitive person. It's almost like coming from a place of, a universal place of the need for that, to be more sensitive to our own limitations and all the amazing things, amazing experiences we can have within the body and outside, but also the connectivity, the sense of connectedness. You just mentioned that too, interacting with other people. From that level, it feels to me that it's deeper. There's something about being sensitive to other people's feelings and the way they view life in themselves that speaks to my heart in a very powerful way. So thank you for saying that.
Oh, yeah. I think sometimes, highly sensitive people, that it can be, I feel like that's almost a popular thing right now, or a way of people identifying themselves or explaining themselves. And I think that's incredible. I think, it's hard to embrace your vulnerabilities and to name what your sensitivities are. But I know for myself, if I don't do that, then I have a really hard time staying open rather than shutting down. Um, I'm raising a very sensitive child. He has a lot of, sound sensitivities. He's a lot of neurodiversity, and he can sometimes feel, a friend of mine said this best, like a raw nerve just moving through the world. And, my instinct is to try and protect him all the time, but it's also sort of being his parent has made me reframe that in just sort of changing the focus to helping him understand what his superpower is and why he feels things so strongly, and really helping him build up that understanding and his toolkit so he stays open to feeling things instead of just putting up walls and barriers, which is what you were saying I think a lot of people end up doing.
Yes, yes, yes. That's exactly it. And then later on, it becomes like a journey of healing. And then whether
Yeah.
we are open to therapy or not, forms of healing. That's beautiful to hear that you already building the foundation. So your son understands himself. So that will help him not just navigate this reality, the world, but also other people similar to him.
I hope so. It's certainly
Yeah.
a journey.
It's a vision, right? That's a vision that comes to me
That's the
in a
vision.
beautiful way. I know,
Oh,
in
thank
a
you.
hopeful way. I know. It's a lot of times I try to not even use the word hope because it feels like just trying to be positive about everything in a way, trying to even push away the expectation of negativity that something could go wrong.
Right.
Or kind of that way of thinking that, life is, I deserve to be happy and life should go my way.
Mm-hmm.
That
Right.
doesn't help us. So, yeah, you made me reflect on that too. Actually, there's so much reflection that kind of I see like awakening in me by being in touch with you. That's interesting. It might be that I share that too. Who knows? It
Oh,
feels like I never labeled myself a highly sensitive person, but it feels that way.
oh, I'm so honored you feel that way. I find myself drawn to highly sensitive people as well. I think I just yearn for connection, and I think I can, I think that's like, a form of intimacy in my friendships. And so I can tell that you're very open to it too. So I think from the get-go, we've had that connection.
Yes, it feels that way, Anna. So let me ask you some open questions. I guess the first one that comes to mind is that I didn't write here is what inspired you to become a mental health therapist?
Ooh. I think I grew up in a family like so many people that struggled with various forms of dysfunction. For me, what that looked like was there was a lot of addiction in my family, and underneath that, there were a lot of mental health issues and just issues in general that were being swept under the rug. We didn't talk a lot about what were we weren't allowed to talk about what we were seeing. And I think a lot, with addiction and with a lot of things, um, trauma is generational. And so I think, there isn't blame there. That's certainly like not that's not the place I'm coming from. But there was a lot of stuff I just hadn't processed in my life. And I was drawn to other careers in my 20s. I worked in marketing. I worked in PR. I was a teacher, and I was really yearning for a career that had more meaning to me. And actually, I was feeling that before I started teaching, and then when I started teaching, I sort of realized that I was really drawn to the mental health field. At that point, I had done a lot of counseling and therapy myself. There was a graduate program here in Santa Fe that I was really interested in that uses a lot of art therapy and different modalities. So I, kind of packed up and moved to Santa Fe,
Wow.
and
Mm,
started a graduate program in counseling, and I've been here ever since.
right. Wow. It makes me think about how amazing the brain is. I mean, it's the body itself, but the body mind complex, how it works. It seems like it's always trying to solve not even what it perceives as issues, because it doesn't really. It's just something that's happening, that's getting in the way of its own state of harmony and happiness. So it seems like it does whatever it takes, to kind of bring these forms of healing. And I can see that in my own life. It's incredible. So what is your idea of happiness these days, Anna? How do you define happiness?
Oh, wow. Well, happiness is fleeting, right? I mean,
Yes, it
moment to
feels that
moment,
way.
it does
Yeah.
sometimes. I think happiness for me now looks a lot more like peace, real like inner peace, in terms of my mental health, in terms of my physical health, in terms of my parenting health. I think as I've gotten older, it's more about balance than anything else. And then there are moments of just pure happiness, when I'm with my sisters in a place we love, or with my family doing something we love, but the understanding that um, there's going to be the downturn as well.
Mhm.
Um, when we have to kind of, the struggle. There's always going to be that too. So I think for me, it's more of a balance these days.
Yeah, I love that you brought that piece of inner peace. That's something that resonates with me, this idea of being at peace. And then I try to unpack that. What does it mean to be at peace? Is that being in acceptance with what is happening, that it's getting in the way of our happiness, perhaps? Like, how do you describe that? What is to be at peace?
For me, I think what I've realized and what I understand on a deeper level now is that it stems from gratefulness, like gratefulness for the life I have and the life I had, rather than the life I wish I had, or the life that I wish that I have today. We're getting so much information from social media and culture and pop culture, and it's hard to kind of filter out messages. And also, sometimes when you do mental health work, it brings up a lot from the past, and it can bring up feelings of regret or all kinds of things. So I think for me, peace, because that's a word that's sort of, you're right, hard to understand, it really stems from forgiveness and acceptance, and just trying to really be grateful for the life that I have right now.
Yeah, that sounds really great to me. This definition, the way you dance around that idea, right? Being grateful, even if it is just for this moment, like moment by moment, being in appreciation of what's happening or for what we have. In a way, it is kind of shifting our attention, isn't it, Anna, to something that is, it's always here, that is here. Like even the idea of being alive, you mentioned that in one of your articles that caught my attention, being alive. But then we don't want to just to be alive, as you said. It's not just about survival.
Right.
We want to thrive. We want to go beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
So I have those questions. I was saving them here. Let me see if I can still hold on to them. Yeah, I have them here for the next session of the interview. But another question that I would love to ask you is about the purpose of the human experience. What do you feel that is? If there is one purpose per se, what would that be?
I mean, for me, I think it comes back to awareness, and just really, you know, trying to examine who you are, examine your life, it's a continual process, of course, making sure it aligns with the values you create, the relationships you build, family. And then I think for me, it's also been a huge challenge for me has been sort of integrating that into being present. And this idea of like, what if we can just be and not do all the time?
Yeah, that's something that is, I mean, to me, it's the question that comes to me is, why can we be and do at the same time?
Yeah.
Have this presence right here, being present to what is present. And I don't know, for me, the feeling of joy arises every time when I'm present. But I'm doing something. It's not that I'm not doing. So it feels that way.
Right. Being present in what you're doing. That's the next level. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. That's a practice, isn't it, Anna?
Yes, it is.
So my last open question, the warm-up question, is about love. I have to use the same word. I love the way you talk about your husband and how supportive he was throughout your journey with breast cancer and everything else between, which we'll talk about in a moment. So the open question is, what is your understanding of love these days? What is love to you?
I think that any human being that has the capacity for empathy or compassion has a fear of disconnection. And I think most human beings yearn for love and yearn for that sense of belonging. And I've heard you speak on your other podcasts about, love is everywhere. It's all around us. If once you can really truly love yourself, then it sort of takes away that separateness between one another. And I think that on, its truest level, to me, that's what love is. And I think it starts with forgiveness. I think it starts with acceptance for yourself. And then you can sort of learn how to have that unconditional love. And you can also allow that unconditional love in through intimacy. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not just a relationship with somebody specifically. I love the way you brought this larger picture of what love is. Right.
Yeah, but you know what? Hearing you say that makes me want to add that you can, that can be a foundation, after you choose your partner and you embark on a life together and you have kids and you have a home and you try not to lose yourself as you move through the world in all these different roles, your career. And so it is also choices. It is negotiations. It's communication. It's how you work together in relationships.
Yes. Yeah. That is true. That's one of my perspective comes from that larger view. It has been for the last 15 years, but it's integrating them, right? As you said, integrating this larger kind of picture idea of love into this relative reality per se. Now it's a practice. It's an interesting practice because it seems like it slows down. It's easier for me to understand, kind of see everything as love. It's so easy. But then when I'm quiet, when I'm meditating, even when I'm here talking to you about these things, like, oh, it feels really amazing. But then when the challenges, it's the relationship with my husband, for example, or my family and friends. And then when they display this unwillingness to communicate openly, to express themselves honestly, or to have a deep conversation or a conversation about anything. So when they close that door, then it seems like it's not as easy. It seems like even my own door of unconditional love and that broader view of love kind of it closes too. And that's interesting to notice. And I wonder if that's because it's the body and the mind, they don't really, it seems like they work at a very slow pace. They're very slow, right? Understanding these larger ideas of life.
Yeah, they do. I mean, that can bring a lot of frustrations. I know for myself
Yeah.
when I've done work on my anxiety or, um, any physical symptoms I'm having around that. And I feel like I've made strides. And then out of nowhere, you'll feel a symptom again. And you're like, but wait a
Yeah.
second, I already worked on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
What are you doing here?
Yes. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And the
How
idea that
fascinating.
you can't change other people really. They have to do, when you talk about doing the work, they have to do it for themselves as well. So,
Yeah,
so
that's the choice, right? That they always have anyway.
it
Yeah.
is. So that might be a sign that you have done the work and you reach a point where it's not being reciprocated. You can sense you've reached a point and the door closes, and that's you can't take someone, you can't lead someone down the hallway, so.
Yes. Thank you for saying that because it feels that way. Hopefully, my husband won't listen to this episode. Well, I talked to him about it anyway. Yes, right. Beautifully said. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Yeah, that shows how highly sensitive you are. It's
Yes.
almost like you're picking up that. I have to ask you this question. Do you have any spiritual practices or ideas, views of life, Anna?
I was raised, um, let's say, with Catholic religion light. um,
Yes, yes, I
we
know. I can relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting because my mom is a nun. She actually in her
Ah.
20s was a nun. She lived in the convent and she didn't take her final vows. And so she wanted us to develop our spirituality on our own. She laid the foundation for us, in terms of understanding religion. And then I think over time I have, more spirituality than formal religion in my life right now. Although I have started going to Al-Anon, and that has, strengthened and deepened my relationship with a higher power. So that's something
Alana,
I'm continuing to explore now in my adulthood, which is kind of cool.
yes. What is it? And I probably never heard of Al-Anon. I don't know what that is.
So Al-Anon is a program for, children of alcoholics or anyone that's been affected by somebody's addiction.
Yes, and I remember going, I think I went to, they had a name for it. I think it was Women Who Loved Too Much, I remember.
Oh, wow.
And that
Yeah.
and that was connected to the AA. That was fascinating to me, and to just kind of, no, it can't be.
Yeah.
You can never love too much.
Right.
How can this be an addiction?
It's an
Um,
addiction. Yep. That
yes,
moment. I'm the
yeah,
problem.
that
It's
was,
me.
yeah, isn't that amazing? And how we uncover these things like little by little throughout life. What's getting in the way, really, of happiness and peace and that unconditional love at the body mind level, which is a big one, right? It's the human experience. We experience life through the body mind.
Yes.
So it's fascinating. This is another podcast conversation. So
Yes.
let me continue with the questions. So you are a writer, speaker, and licensed mental health therapist. You're also a co-host of Healing and Dealing podcast. So talk to me about how you became a writer. You have written so many amazing articles. You're I mean, a beautiful writer too. You write so well. So talk to me about how you came to that. And of course, I know the backstory a bit, but I would love for you to share that with the audience.
Sure. So, during COVID, my family, and I relocated to Vermont, which is where I spent my high school years. It's been home ever since I was a teenager. So we moved to a small town in Vermont, and I opened a private practice, and I was, working with teenagers and families. And for the first year, it was during COVID. And I felt like, as most people did during that time, just pretty burned out by the work I was doing. I was dealing with a lot of family stuff at the time as well, and processing, really grieving my mother's death. At that point, it would have been 6 years before. And being back in Vermont, I think really stirred up a lot of that for me. So I decided to take a step back and allow myself the time and space to really grieve that loss and think about what was next. And I started writing. I'd always been interested in writing. I've always written, but I had never been published. And I started out by writing a lot about parenting because I'm a mental health therapist. And then I met an editor in New York who he gave me the best advice. He said, I was feeling a little stuck in what direction I wanted to go. And he said, why don't you write about, tell the story of, your favorite story to tell at a cocktail party, like something that brings the room together, that everyone can relate to on some level. And it's, that is funny, but also, traumatic on some level,
Right.
Uh,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I thought about that. And
Yeah. I
I had also, a huge piece of the story is I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2017. And I had a unilateral mastectomy. And instead of chemo, because my cancer was caught very early, I was prescribed a targeted hormone therapy. So when we moved to Vermont, I was 3 years into my treatment. The hormone therapy launched me into menopause, into premature medical menopause. I was 37 years old at the time. So my doctor, at first I was relieved to know I wouldn't need chemotherapy. And I really didn't understand what it meant when he told me that I was going to go into menopause practically overnight. So when I started the drugs, I thought the worst was behind me in terms of the surgeries I'd needed and the diagnosis. But really, my journey was just beginning. So I wrote an essay for the HuffPost about my experience going through premature medical menopause, and how it sort of takes you through my journey of how little I knew at the beginning, and how I handled the symptoms as they came up. And the most severe symptom that I dealt with, which was vaginal atrophy, which is the thinning and drying of the vaginal tissue, and that made intercourse, extremely painful. And how I started recognizing those symptoms, what I did about it, how long it took me to get help, and why, because it took me over a year. And then beginning to research that and really starting to understand that so many women, not just breast cancer survivors, but people who are going through menopause, are suffering from many of these symptoms. And almost 90% of them are suffering from the vaginal symptoms. But for so many different reasons, they're not getting help. And, given my background in therapy, I was fascinated by what are the reasons that people aren't going to their doctors to get help? Why do women feel shame and embarrassment around these very treatable medical conditions? So when my first essay came out in the HuffPost Personal, I started receiving emails from all around the world, just women and men who were writing on behalf of their partners, who had gone through this and had just said, thank you for naming this. Thank you for helping to normalize this. I was going through this. I haven't said anything. I had one woman tell me, I've been having these symptoms. my doctor told me it was due to lack of sleep and sent me on my way. There's a really startling statistic that says that 3 out of 4 women who talk to their doctors about their vaginal symptoms get dismissed by their doctors.
Yeah. Wow. That is incredible. I mean, that caught my attention, yeah, when I read that. And do you, what is, I know it's a taboo. That's what you mentioned. That's the word you used. But I'm wondering what's the nature of that? Why is there so much shame? Is that something that, are you aware that this also happens with men? Because I remember talking to my husband about this, and he said, "Oh, I also have some issues," and then he mentioned some of the issues he had. So it seems like we have a lot of, what's the word for that? I'm trying to find it. It doesn't. It's shame seems to be a byproduct. There's something that it's deeper. It's almost like if there's something deeper than the shame of having bodily a problem at the level of the physical body. It's almost like this shame or the being naive about the being a human. There's something naive about that as well. The innocence of, okay, I'm the human body. I mean, we never have these conversations anyway, the children. You're just in the human body. And then there's lots that will happen to this machine, this organism called body. But it seems like we are not in touch with that. And that's what it really comes to me, because I tend to go deeper into things because I want to know the nature of I want to know the truth. Like what is the truth, behind all this? So have you reflected about almost like the main cause of not talking about certain things, especially when it comes to the body?
Well, that's really interesting because a friend of mine, who's an OBGYN, she said something that was so fascinating to me. She was talking about women who come to her who have, vaginal symptoms. And she was saying, if they even recognize the symptoms. And that made me stop and think, wow, some women can't even put words to this. Some women explain these symptoms away or are in denial, don't feel them or think about them. And there's a whole population of people who aren't even aware that this is happening. And I think that what you're saying is so true. And that's this collective disconnection we have right now. I think it got a lot worse during COVID, but just in terms of our relationships, but then also just with our body.
Yes. Yeah. And a lot of times I wonder, it is my experience as well, having these sensations, feeling these things. I'm 46, I mentioned this off record, and I have I feel the symptoms of menopause, of course. But it's not that I'm ignoring them. I'm very much aware of them. I guess for me, it's that it's just something that is happening, and perhaps I'm not really curious enough to investigate and to explore that. And I'm wondering if that happens as well with some women. Of course, not all of us think that way. But in my case, I'm very much aware of everything that's happening. And I usually talk about it. But it's not that sense, that drive to explore, go deeper into in that physical realm and explore that. It's just not here. And it might be because I'm very much interested in spirituality and anything that has to do with the broader, bigger view of what this is, which we call life.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's what it is for me. So, yeah, I wonder if you have, how do you feel about that? Or does it make sense to you at all? If there's, that can.
I think this idea of aging in, this youth obsessed culture can lead some people to sort of push through a lot of their discomforts around things. But I also think that more so what you're describing is you seem to be more at peace with it, and you haven't,
Yes.
you haven't reached a
Yeah.
point of, I dare
Mm.
say crisis, but you haven't reached a
Right.
point where you've needed
Yes.
like help, from,
Right.
it
Yes.
hasn't, impaired your relationships, your intimacy, your friendships, your health. I mean, I think that when it becomes, but I encourage women to to seek out help from an OBGYN or someone, a specialist who deals with menopause, before that happens, because there's certainly things you can be doing to help ease a lot of the physical discomforts and emotional. Oh, it's
Oh,
everything:
yes.
mental health,
Yeah,
emotions.
they come together. Right.
Hmm.
And that's true, Anna. Yeah, that's a very good point. Maybe has not reached the point of getting in the way of my well-being, right? Once that happens, of course, yeah, I will do something about it. And hopefully, I don't like the word hope, but yeah,
Yeah,
I would expect that to happen.
yeah. You trust yourself to get help.
Yes. So with that in mind, what did you find out reading the one of the articles you wrote many of them about the topic? I noticed the treatment options. So there are many treatment options: vaginal lubricants, vaginal moisturizers, vaginal estrogen therapy. But you talked about, I think it might be something similar, that at the end of the article, you're using estrogen cream. Is that the same thing as vaginal estrogen therapy, or it's something different?
So there are hormone replacement therapies that many women in menopause can benefit from. The Women's Health Initiative put out research, many years ago that scared a lot of people away from using hormone replacement therapies, and a lot of doctors too. There's a perceived risk of increased breast cancer and stroke. Um, I'm certainly not a doctor, but you can find all that information online. Now, the research is showing that, there really isn't a risk. It doesn't Using those hormones doesn't really increase your risk for breast cancer and stroke and all these things that were really, really scaring people. Survivors, the research is a little bit more tricky to understand, and the conversations are more nuanced, and everyone's diagnosis is different. My For instance, my cancer was hormone sensitive, which is why I went on, a hormone therapy, which killed all the estrogen in my body. And then I do and the drug I'm taking is called letrozole. And then I'm also, doing once every 3 month Lupron injections, which has just completely shut down my ovaries. So, similar to surgical menopause, I went into medical menopause like very, very quickly. Um, so I think in the past, it's probably a mixture of things. There hasn't been enough research, and also, in the sort of collective public discourse that's been happening around menopause, people haven't been talking about using estrogen with survivors. Um, I've been in discussion with, a couple doctors oncologists who have shown me clinical studies and have made it pretty clear that vaginal, like a topical vaginal estrogen cream, can be really effective with vaginal atrophy and, pretty harmless. There's basically no risk, to using it in small doses. I think changing people's opinions about that is really hard, because it's coming from a place of fear. If you have breast cancer that survives on estrogen and you've all but stopped eating edamame, it's like, why would you smear estrogen cream all over your body? It just seems counterintuitive. And when people make personal decisions about their health all the time. You think about gluten or alcohol or diet soda or whatever. People's risk tolerance, varies, of course. So I actually haven't tried the estrogen cream yet. I do plan to, but, I want to try some other treatments first.
Yes, yeah, that would be wonderful. I know you will keep writing about these things. And speaking of writing, Talk to me about the new book that you're writing about the same topic and beyond, I believe. That will be an interesting also publication to be out there. I don't even know if there is any books on the topic. I don't think so.
Yeah, so I'm just about finished with, starting work on this book. It's about my experience as a breast cancer survivor. The working title is My Rejuvenation Year. Sort of a year facing, my experience in medical menopause, my experience going through vaginal atrophy, getting to the point where, it's really difficult to have sex with my husband and intimacy in our relationship has changed, and sort of reaching that breaking point, and then trying all of these new innovative vaginal rejuvenation treatments, which are definitely starting to gain popularity. There are, lasers, radio frequency, PRP, which in the past has been used, to treat athletes' back injuries, and then other more holistic methods like vaginal steaming and sort of like ancient healing methods that have been around for a long time. So my journey, that's sort of the educational piece of the book is really, I'm like the guinea pig. I'm trying all these, I'm trying all these treatments. And then it's also, the narrative also revolves around, it's really about healing from within. It's sort of, I think in our society, we all try to fix things that aren't broken, and coming to terms with that and healing from the inside out. And this idea that it's never too late to heal from your past, and move forward. But to do that, it's sort of this radical sacrificing that needs to happen,
Yes, that's true. Beautifully said, Anna. I love that. Healing from within. And, you inspired me to remember something that I read about going into what doesn't need to be healed in order to see what it does. So that's what you reminded me of just now.
Oh, I love that.
Yes, when I heard that, it was like, oh my God, this is it.
Yeah.
In a sense of practice and awareness, really. I mean, awareness first and then becomes a practice.
Yes.
But that's where the fun is in a way. I mean, I call it meaningful fun, coming from that place that doesn't need healing and then just being open to what it does. It feels more like, it feels fun to me. I know it doesn't sound too good even saying that.
I love that. Yeah.
You do? But it is.
I mean, I love that. I try to bring a lot of playfulness and humor into everything I do. And I think it's, especially when you're writing about cancer and grieving. And I think, humor and playfulness and fun is, it helps you stay motivated to keep working at these issues.
Yes, it does. And it's even better when it happens naturally. Like you come from this place of wholeness and then something in you notice things that seems to be broken, but it's not because you are already in wholeness. So that's what it's really, to me, has been an amazing, if I can call it, amazing experience from that perspective of trying to kind of dance with those parts that don't seem to come together, but they do. In the end, it's all here.
I love that. That's like true healing.
Yes, right. It feels that way very much. And I interview lots of therapists here and non-duality teachers, non-dual therapists too. I interviewed them sometimes. And I'm a student of Vedanta, which is a non-duality philosophy. So it's amazing to see those two parts coming together. Like, oh my God. And seeing people like yourself, like therapists, going into this, becoming aware of, this reality that is always here, that is whole, that's complete. And then kind of it's still not stopping there, not ending the exploration there, going into the human experience, bringing that into this of what's happening here now, which we call the human experience. I don't even know. I think we label everything. A lot of times I say, I don't even know what this is.
Yeah.
What is this happening? Right? Yeah, happening.
Doing the dishes and doing the school drop-offs. And
all these things, like what is, it's just fascinating even to have conversations like about these things to me. Like, oh my God, how can we talk about these things even? That's incredible. So I want to thank you again. We're almost at the end of the conversation for today. I want to thank you for being open to life as you are. It's truly, truly beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Anna. And let's see, I made it. Yeah, there's something funny that I have to mention this because I was laughing when I read this. Speaking of humor, you mentioned about doctors. I think it was somebody who went to a doctor and then a woman, and then she talked about the issue with the vaginal atrophy or vaginal dryness. And I think you wrote that they made a comment about, oh, if you don't use it, you lose it, something like that. I was laughing at that, like, my God. And then it's like, who would make that comment? Although it does make sense, doesn't it? Because the body circulation, so we need to stimulate every part of our bodies. So it made sense to me, but it was funny anyway.
Yeah, I think. I think that was the right takeaway from that because of, it does make sense on a mechanical level. However, I will say,
yes,
I've had 2 oncologists say that to me, and both of them happen to be men. So I think that there's not. It's there's a limitation to understanding a woman's body if you're
a man.
If you're a man.
Yes, I would say so.
Yeah.
Right? And it seems like they don't even want to talk about the subject, go deeper into it anyway. And I wonder why. If you're a professional in the area, then that's it, right?
Yeah. And there's a little bit of like micro-blaming going on, getting a response like that from a doctor who most people, I know I certainly do, hold in high esteem, and they're in a position of power or authority. And there's a little bit of like micro-blaming. Like what I mean by that is like, well, you're not doing enough.
Yes. Right. Not doing your part.
Right. It's those statements and that way of being where it just closes down conversations. It closes down that moment of vulnerability.
Wow, Anna, that's definitely another podcast conversation.
Yes, I would love to come back and talk about that.
Yeah, please. I would love to hear more about it too, because I had lots of experiences. Not too many per se, like numbers, but way too many for me, like being in contact with professionals, doctors who would stop conversation where there was the opportunity to actually invite a lot more exploration on whatever was being discussed. So, and then I always wondered why. Oh, you're a professional in this area. So I think, I don't know, that's another conversation, but I feel like it's that disconnection with our humanity. It's almost like trying to make everything too simple in a way, simplifying everything, but coming from a place of, let's say, neglect, really. Yeah, or fear. I think you used the right word, fear. That's, most people don't want to go deeper into anything. It might be too painful for them or too much work.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sad to hear that this happens. I talk to so many people and I hear that from them too. And all we can do now is to have more conversations about it because we can't really change the system all of a sudden, right, overnight.
Right.
So,
and to encourage people to have conversations with their body, just like what you were talking about, to stay open to receiving information, however it comes up, and then doing the hustle of really tracking down the answers and getting the help you need.
Yes. Yeah. You see, going back to the individual empowerment, right?
Yeah.
Self-knowledge, self-awareness. Yes, a billion times to that. So we're almost at the end. I do have a few more questions. But before that, would you like to add anything that you left unsaid or read a passage, actually? Read I know a passage of a book. It's not available now. We talked about that before, but I believe you have something that you could read for us,
I
right?
do.
And
I could read
yes.
an excerpt from my recent article that ran on Vogue. Okay. 5 years prior, I was at Target picking out Halloween costumes for my 2 toddlers when a radiologist called me with my breast biopsy results. The tumor is malignant, she said, but it looks early stage. We'll know more in the next few days. I stood frozen in the middle of the aisle, staring at the Paw Patrol costume in my cart as other moms pushed their way around me, grabbing last-minute items off the racks. I assumed the small lump I'd recently found on my right breast was something left over from breastfeeding my youngest son. I had no idea the havoc that mass of cells was going to cause. Within a week, I went from being a healthy 37-year-old mother of 2 boys to a breast cancer patient. By Christmas 2017, I was recovering at my mother-in-law's house in Lincoln, Massachusetts, from a unilateral mastectomy. My cancer was hormone receptor positive, meaning it was receptive to hormone therapy. Following my surgery, my oncologist explained that given my age and type of breast cancer, it would be most effective to treat my cancer with something called an aromatase inhibitor, which works by blocking the enzyme that helps make estrogen in the body. If we kill the estrogen in your body, then the cancer most likely can't grow back, he said. But these medications will induce premature medical menopause. Okay, I said, relieved to learn I wouldn't need chemotherapy. At the time, the prospect of an early induced menopause was abstract to me, like trying to understand childbirth before going into labor. My oncologist prescribed a 5-year treatment plan that wiped out all the estrogen in my body and shut down my ovaries. Within weeks, I was a hot-flashing, mood-swinging insomniac. In some ways, I was prepared for the onslaught of symptoms. I remember my mother driving me around town in the dead of winter in Vermont with all the windows down. My doctor also warned me about the likelihood of having intense mood swings and night sweats. But my worst symptom of all, and the one no one ever mentioned, was vaginal atrophy.
I love how vulnerable you had to be in order to write like this. It's very there's not just the details, but there's a lot of feelings. I can feel it's almost visualized it's almost like a movie scene. So thank you for being this amazing human being and a beautiful writer that you are too. Wow. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you for having me.
Wow. And before we say goodbye for today, I do have a technical question. But before that, I have this question that I ask everyone, pretty much everyone. What 3 experiences you wish everyone to have before they lose the body, before they die?
Oh, wow. Well, I think of like the 2 most radical experiences for me have been forgiveness for myself, um, for not being perfect, forgiveness of others for not being perfect, just sort of letting go of all that. And then acceptance, which we talked about earlier, just like, accepting the life I have and not the life I wish I'd had. And this understanding that, life is still being written, it's still unfolding all around me. And this idea that it comes in chapters and to really try and let it unfold.
Yes.
And so,
Hi, Anna. Yeah.
oh, hi. I would say
Yes.
the third experience I would say would be a physical experience of having like some kind of peak experience in nature. For me, that's been truly transformative and humbling. Like a feeling of, like for me, it's like skiing in powder and just feeling like I'm floating and just really connected with the universe. And you know, for me, that's also a way of accessing joy and in the moment. So
Yes. I mean, it all sounds very spiritual to me, I have to say. Yes. That's the universal, it's universal messages, really. We all can relate to. for sure. I mean, I can, and I'm sure my audience can. So thank you so much for sharing timeless wisdom as well. We need more of this kind of wisdom in this reality, not just knowledge, but wisdom. Thank you, Anna. And before we say goodbye for today, where's the best place to find more information about you and what you do?
You can always go to my website, which is annasullivan.net. And I usually update that with all of my writing and speaking engagements. And you can also find me on Instagram. Anna Sullivan Writer is my handle, I guess it's called. And I, post some of my writing there. And actually, I've been developing a lot of community there as well.
Wonderful. I'll have those links on your podcast profile on the notes. Thank you so much again for your presence. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Anna Sullivan and her work, please visit annasullivan.net.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.